Thanks again for joining us on another episode of Marriage Bite. We're excited to have you here today because today we're going to be talking about intimacy in marriage. Still continuing on this topic of relaying the foundation, we're going to focus today on intimacy in marriage, and then Abby, talk to us a little about your perspective on intimacy in marriage.
Sweetheart, I don't think any marriage really will succeed without intimacy. And I guess the question is, what is intimacy? How do we define intimacy? I think one of the best definitions that I know of is really just letting another person know you, letting another person experience you, who you truly are. We know how to put up facades and really letting people in on what we want them to, be in on what we want them to know. But in marriage, that cannot happen. For you to have a successful marriage, you've got to be naked and not ashamed. You have to have true intimacy, letting that person experience the totality of who you are.
Yes, I agree. For me, my background has a lot to do with how I've been able to allow myself to be intimate, just how I was raised. I was fortunate enough to be raised with older sisters. And so I grew up in the midst of women, and I've always just, had that touch of being able to express myself and be able to say what's on my heart. And I realized that has been a big benefit to our marriage. But in terms of intimacy and being vulnerable, one of the best ways I can define it is in order for you to experience the totality of intimacy as a man in your marriage with your wife, you have to be willing to be vulnerable. You have to be willing to, for lack of a better word, drop your guard down and be willing to be naked, like Abby said, and not ashamed with your wife. Be able to express your heart content to her. Even though you might feel like, oh, she might judge me, or she might see me differently, or she might not appreciate me as much as she does. There is no macho in intimacy when it comes to marriage.
And that is so true that he said that, because, you touched on the fact that you have to be vulnerable. And intimacy is really vulnerability. Allowing another person to see you for who you truly are, to see your weaknesses, to see your faults. Oftentimes, we're okay with people seeing our strengths and the beautiful part of us. But to really see our backside, which isn't all that pretty, those the depths of us that we really don't want other people to know about. And that's what vulnerability is. It's okay for me to be weak with you, and it's okay for you to be weak with me. And I believe that we cannot practice real intimacy without a safe environment. See, that vulnerability calls for safety. You talked about how you were raised and how you were able to express yourself because it was okay to be vulnerable in your home. It was okay to tell it as it was, how you were feeling, without anybody stamping upon you that macho stamp of, if you're a guy, you can't cry, and if you're a man, you shouldn't be seen shedding a tear. And that's what we should cultivate in our homes too. That when you shed a tear with me, I don't see it as being weak. When I come to you and I say, you know what, honey, I really don't know how to deal with this, as it relates to our daughter or as it relates to the kids, it's okay without that expectation of, well, you're the mom and you're a woman, you should know how to deal with our daughter, or you should know how to deal with everything a child needs. So, when we talk about being vulnerable, we've got to be careful about not placing societal, cultural expectations on the other person to the point where they don't even want to share anything.
That's true. That's very true.
And I even think the biggest part of safety, cultivating a safe environment for intimacy to be fostered, is knowing that when I share a deep part of me,
it's safe.
It's safe. You're never going to use it against me, because a lot of people feel like, well, because I told my husband this particular thing, or I told my wife this thing, the day she was upset with me, she just blurted it out.
She let me have it.
She let you have it. She demeaned you. She emasculated you, or verbally abusing your wife because of something she shared with you. Yeah. Real intimacy gives you that atmosphere of safety. And we even have that with God.
Yes.
See, God isn't so macho that we cannot relate with him. Even God would say, come, let us reason together. I'm God and you're just my little child, but I want to reason with you. I want you to state your case, and then I can, it's okay for you to ask me questions. So God gives us that atmosphere of intimacy and trust where we're able to relate how we're really feeling with him. So we've got to be able to do that in marriage as well.
I like the way you said that, with God, you have to be able to express yourself to him and tell God how you truly feel. It's the same with marriage. You see, one of the things I've learned in getting to know you better over the course of our marriage and our friendship spanning almost 2 decades now, I've come to understand that part of you getting to know me sometimes require you to ask me certain questions that might appear to be uncomfortable sometimes. You may ask me deep questions, maybe questions nobody else has ever asked me before, and it's just your part of you trying to get to know me better than you do. And so sometimes when you're trying to be intimate with somebody, it's a season where sometimes they might pose to you questions that are uncomfortable for you to answer. You might have to, think through those questions and how to answer them. That's why, when I see people in a relationship, an uncommitted relationship, trying to be intimate, I always wonder what they're trying to do. Because intimacy is not until the third stage of a relationship. The 5 levels of friendship that we talk about, you have the acquaintance, you have the casual friends, you have the close friend, and then you have the intimate friends, and you have lovers. Intimacy should be the last step that you get to before the loving experience, where you actually get to a physical experience. But a lot of people do things backwards. But coming back home to this word,
and
intimacy.
That physical experience comes in marriage.
Yes.
It has to come in the confines of marriage.
Covenant,
and
yes.
And a lot of people want to skip that.
Yeah.
They want to jump the hoops from acquaintance to friends with benefits or friends with benefits. And then they miss out on what true intimacy is, because true intimacy gives us the fullness, the fulfillment of physical intimacy. And just so you know, intimacy isn't just sex. It's not just physical intimacy. There are varying levels of intimacy. We talk about, being financially intimate, being emotionally intimate. We talk about being spiritually intimate. But of course, a big perk of intimacy as a whole is the physical intimacy. Yes. And we'll talk about that, in another segment. But I love the fact that you've helped our viewers understand that even with friendships, acquaintances, casual friendships, intimate friendships, then lovers, which is that last step you graduate into when you get into that covenant of marriage.
Yes. And the truth is this. You're going to go through different levels of intimacy in marriage. I can guarantee you that, the level of intimacy we shared when we first got married is not the level of intimacy we have right now. And a lot of the intimate graduation, for lack of a better word, that you're going to experience in your marriage is going to be based on how willing you are to be vulnerable with one another. My biggest help that I've gotten as a man in able to help myself be vulnerable with my wife is my direct relationship with God. The more I am willing to be vulnerable with God, the more I'm willing to be intimate with God, it translates into intimacy with Abby. When I struggle with certain things that I need to be intimate with or naked with Abby, I take it to God and I seek guidance on how to express what I'm exactly feeling in that moment or in that situation, so that we do not have any hindrance with us being intimate. And different women have different processes. With my wife is totally different. Intimacy, physical intimacy with her can only come as a result of a connection spiritually, a connection in the mind before the body can follow suit. And like Abby said, we're going to talk about physical intimacy in another segment, where you have to understand that the physical intimacy is the third level or the third layer of a complete intimacy. You have to have the spiritual intimacy. You have to have the intimacy in the mind for you to reason, to come together in unity and agreement in the mind. And anytime you have a situation where the mind, the spirit is together, the physical body has no choice but to fall in line. But we'll deal with that in another segment. So
Definitely.
I just want to say that, my own level of success and being intimate with you has been as my willingness to be vulnerable with God, my creator, has allowed me to be able to take some of what I draw from him and share with you.
And it's good that you spoke about that point, because God created you to be intimate. God created us for intimacy. So it's not because there's something wrong when we are vying for that closeness with another person. It's just the way we're wired. And there's a part of you that only God can satisfy. I know we've mentioned that before. There's a part of you that only God can reach. And that's just the way we're all wired. But then there's another part that God has wired for your spouse to fulfill, to meet. And that's why we're always seeking that intimacy. And sometimes we may have our guards up and we may say, oh, I'm not that emotional, I'm not that kind of a person. But the truth of the matter is, we do want the other person to be able to see into us, to have that X-ray permission, to really,
X-ray permission,
right, to really see how we really are and how we're doing on the inside, and I I really think that we need to renew our thinking. We need to renew our mind about how we process intimacy. Our thinking patterns have been, I think, a little tainted, with culture and so many generations past that. The goal of intimacy in marriage is really oneness.
Yes.
The same unity we've been talking about. The goal of intimacy in marriage is oneness. Oneness of heart, oneness of vision, oneness of spirit, and oneness of body. And so I really just say that the best way to really describe it in marriage is oneness of spirit. God created a man and male and female at the very beginning, and yet when we come together, He wants us to dwell together as one. So if there's anything that I want us to take away from this, and our viewers to take away from this, is the fact that intimacy can be cultivated, but it has to be cultivated in a place of safety, where you're not going to make fun of me for the things I'm going to share with you. You're never going to use it as a weapon against me later on when you decide to be upset with me, and I don't want to choose the things I say to you. And that's another thing in marriage. That's not true intimacy. I don't want to dally or, walk on thin ice when it comes to letting you know things about me. And I bless God that we have a friendship first before anything else. And so we're always so quick to, guess what happened today? Or, we just can't hold it in. And I think that that's something God has blessed us with.
It is important, if you're single out there, you're watching this video by any chance, that you have to understand that the most important thing you can do for yourself in relating or leading up to marriage is to develop a friendship with whomever it is you're going to spend the rest of your life with. Because you're going to have your ups and downs in marriage, but your friendship will carry you through. That person that you know that you want to be with, you want to share everything that is going on with you with, that person that you can talk to regardless of the circumstance or situation, it's one of the best part of our marriage. It's one of the best things that I enjoy about you and I, because we're able to share with each other, we're able to talk. You see, for those people who are married, you're watching this, you can attest to the fact that, it's not always all the entire time throughout your marriage that you're in love. There are times where it is the friendship that will carry through that roller coaster of, am I in love today? Am I in love tomorrow? And there's so many situations and circumstances in life that comes in that changes the level of how you feel about your spouse in marriage. Your children come in, you start having children, it's a total different level. Now you're balancing the love that you have for yourself and the love for your child with your spouse. And so the intimacy takes another level and takes a turn. And if you're not able to find that friendship, find that connection in friendship with your spouse, you tend to lose each other as one person is going through a different shift in how they respond intimately, and the other person is just feeling left alone. So it's important for you to develop and cultivate that friendship as you're going through that experience of marriage. Or if you're looking to be married and you're single, it's a foundation that you have to at least have before you proceed into a marriage.
And honey, it's funny you said friendship. You piggybacked on what I talked about, how God has blessed us with a good friendship. But even friendship comes with a lot of grace. And intimacy comes with a substantial amount of grace. And what do I mean by that? I need to extend grace to you at all times when you're vulnerable with me. And that's what we do in friendships. Our best friend gets us really mad, and then 2 days later we make up because we just can't do without that best friend. And that's what we share, that I get upset with you and 2 minutes later I come because I want to talk to you, So I think intimacy, really needs a substantial amount of grace, because when I'm in that vulnerable state, I need you to remember what Christ did for us. The Bible says that we have a high priest who can empathize with the feelings of our weaknesses. And I know that that's one of the reasons why He came in the flesh. Yes, to die on the cross for us, but He walked on the face of the earth, so He knows how we feel. And I think that for intimacy to be fostered, we need to be able to empathize with one another. We need to be able to put ourselves in the other person's shoes, because Christ is touched by our weakness, because He puts Himself in our shoes, and He gives us the grace that we need to go through that situation.
And that's a fact. It's a fact that you are going to have to extend grace in all situations as you experience vulnerability with your spouse. It's not going to be a day walk. It's not going to be a walk in the park either. It's going to take time. Intimacy takes time to cultivate. It takes time to develop. It takes time for you to get to a place of vulnerability with your spouse. Some people achieve this throughout the course of their marriage. Some people, never achieve a full level of intimacy throughout the course of their marriage. What we're trying to let you know is this. If you're willing to be vulnerable with your Maker, with God, the Creator, the author and the perfecter of your faith, it makes it a lot easier for you to get that grace that you receive from God, to be able to apply the grace Abby's talking about towards your spouse. So you receive grace to give grace. You cannot give what you don't have. And in order for you to be able to give grace, you have to receive grace. And the only way we know how to receive grace is a direct relationship with God.
We are able to receive grace and give grace because we've gotten it from God. But we're only able to experience it with God on a deeper level because we've also built intimacy with God. Right. You said something about some people may never even experience full intimacy because it takes time. Just the same with building intimacy with anybody, building intimacy with God. If you haven't listened to those videos, the first couple of videos, that we put out earlier in the year, were all about building intimacy with God. It takes time. And one of the founding things that you need to build intimacy on is trust. Trust takes time. Yes. We talked about trusting in God. Trust takes time. And trust is knowing that I can be vulnerable with you, knowing that you got my back no matter what. When I come to you and I'm weeping because I'm a guy, you still got my back. Yes. When I come to you as a woman and I don't know what to do, even though it's something women should be able to deal with, you still got my back. Yes. And that's trust. That's trust. That is trust. So, we've talked about all of these varying levels of intimacy, and we've even talked a little bit about on physical intimacy. And I think I want us to close by reminding our viewers that, even great sex, great physical intimacy is built on spiritual intimacy. It is built on having that overall, view of what intimacy should really be, on that spiritual oneness. Yes. Because a lot of people have itchy ears when it comes to sex and physical intimacy, and we know we're still going to talk about that. Yes. But if there's anything I want us to leave our viewers with, it's understanding the fact that it's okay for us to crave intimacy because that's how God created us. That's how we're designed. And that, complete intimacy is found in the knowledge of who God is, that He created you and your spouse, to have a desire for intimacy, to crave intimacy with one another. He put that inside of both of us. Yes. And also He wants intimacy with you. Yes. You don't understand that void that you're feeling, but there's a part of you that your spouse can reach, and that's a part that only God can reach. So what are we telling you? We need you to cultivate intimacy in your marriage, and we need you to cultivate vertical intimacy with God who created you as well, because there is so much in marriage that we can enjoy if we can just get our God relationship right. That is correct. You get your God relationship right, you're going to get your relationship with your spouse right. I want to thank you so much for taking the time to listen to us, and we look forward to more episodes with you. And like I said, and I keep saying, for those singers out there, we got something for you. And also stay tuned for our conversation about physical intimacy as it relates to marriage. Be blessed. Bye for now.